Coming up on Network Africa today, dozens killed in another boat accident in Democratic Republic of Congo. Final election results due to be announced in Liberia. Plus, World Food Programme warns of humanitarian nightmare in Gaza Strip. Hello and welcome to Network Africa on Channels Television. I'm Anne Nwawado. We start in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 40 people have drowned after a passenger boat capsized in western region. The whaler was carrying passengers and goods when it capsized into the Lalonga River in the Equateur province. While the passengers, mostly traders, were returning from a local market crossing to Mbandaka, which is the province's capital. There are fears that the death toll could rise as more are reported missing. And let's head on to election matters in Liberia, where the final election results are due to be announced after the election body completed the nationwide ballot tallying and the collation. Voting was repeated last week in 2 polling stations in northeastern Nimba County. That's after ballots were tampered with by unknown people during the first round of elections on October the 10th. The total poll outcome for the presidential, the senatorial, and local representatives vote will be announced at the National Elections Commission headquarters in the capital, Monrovia. Provisional results show that President George Weah and his main rival, Joseph Boakai, are still running neck and neck, meaning that they are set for a runoff. According to the provisional results announced last week, Mr. Weah has 43.8% of the vote, while Mr. Boakai has 43.5%. And joining us on the program now to give more on this is to give us a sense of the mood actually during the election and what is the overriding sentiments about the voting in places where ballots were tampered with and how news of a possible runoff been received among the people and of course what is likely to happen. We'll be bringing you the details of that in the course of the program. Well, the U.S. has now suspended most of its financial assistance to Gabon in response to a military takeover, and there are 2 months to go. The U.S. State Department said it had formally established that a coup took place in the West African country, which under U.S. law requires an end to non-humanitarian aid. Humanitarian, health, and educational assistance in Gabon will continue, which is a statement from the department. We will resume our assistance, according to them, alongside concrete actions by the transitional government towards establishing democratic rule. Last month, the U.S. said it paused some foreign assistance programs that were benefiting the Gabonese military government. Mutinous soldiers, led by General Brice Oligui Nguema, overthrew Mr. Ali Bongo Ondimba in August, but just as he was proclaimed the winner of a widely criticized election. The junta appointed Raymond Ndong Sima, who has been an opposition leader, as Gabon's prime minister. The military has pledged to oversee free and fair elections, but has not yet released the polling dates. The government of Rwanda has sent humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people in Gaza. In a brief statement, the government's deputy spokesman, Eliane Mukuralinda, wrote that the donation was sent to the Jordan Nashemite Charity Group and has arrived in the Jordanian capital, Amman. The aid comprises 16 tons of food items, medicines, and medical supplies. The spokesman reiterated the need for a de-escalation to protect the lives of civilians. Volunteers in Gaza served food to Palestinians who fled their houses due to the Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, taking refuge on a UN-run school in the southern region of Gaza. Video shows volunteers stirring soup in a big pot, pouring food into containers held by children and adults at that school. Israel's total siege of Gaza, launched after the October 7 cross-border attack on southern Israel by militants of the Islamic movement Hamas, has left the enclave's 2.3 million people running out of food, water, medicines, and fuel. More than 1 million of them lived in a part of Gaza Strip in the north, and hundreds of thousands have now gone south to cram into temporary quarters despite unremitting air and artillery strikes also hitting the southern areas that they have fled to. The United Nations World Food Programme is warning of a deteriorating crisis in the Gaza region, with conditions among the worst the organization has ever seen. The deputy head of emergencies at WFP, Brian Lander, decries the desperate need of water and food and all the primary needs for survival, and the fact that humanitarian organizations are unable to reach 1.1 million in desperate need of food. The United Nations is now asking Israel to allow more aid into Gaza, saying that the aid letting so far meets just a tiny fraction of these needs.
We need the support to be able to respond at scale. What we're seeing now is a very limited access into Gaza. It's a trickle of trucks. Before the crisis, we understand that approximately 465 trucks a day were needed to support the population in Gaza. We're seeing at best 20 trucks a day at the moment. And so with that kind of limitation on the response, we cannot effectively respond to the needs as we see them now. It is not sufficient at all. We do not have the access that we need, both to access Gaza itself, but then within Gaza to be able to move commodities, to be able to ensure that our safety of our staff on the ground. We do not have those assurances at all, and therefore we cannot access the people that need the desperate assistance that we can provide. It's only going to get worse. We know that food is running low in Gaza in the shops. From our contacts with the traders that we've been working with, we know that people are running out of food very quickly. We are trying to get food into Gaza. The only route at the moment is through the Rafah crossing with Egypt, but that's very limited, and we do not have the kind of access that we need to understand and to be able to provide people with the food that they need. We're trying to get
More than 5,000 people have been killed in Gaza in 2 weeks of Israel's airstrikes unleashed in response to a devastating Hamas attack on southern Israel on October the 7th. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, while the Islamist militant group killed more than 1,400 people, mostly civilians, in one single day. Geopolitical analyst Edward Epa gives insight on why conflict between the two countries have lingered for decades. He was speaking with Channel's foreign correspondent on our program, Diplomatic Channel.
About the Arab nations, who are the ones that are very strong? You have Saudi Arabia because of its money, and then Egypt comes in, Oman, Jordan, and Syria. I mean, Syria has had a war that's been going on now for decades, getting support from Russia. So that section of the world is a very delicate, you have to tiptoe in order to make sure you don't offend because of the amount of resources, Qatar, UAE, all these countries depend on America defense support. To keep themselves away from themselves, because, at one time, the Arab nations excluded Qatar. Egypt, on the other side, is where the Israelis are saying, the tunnel that brings in all these arms to fight, to attack Israel comes from. So Israel also has to be very delicate because that's where Israel and Gaza share a boundary. And so it's a very tricky political coexistence. The Arab nations haven't found a strong voice because, again, these countries are ruled by monarchies, except for Egypt. So when the family members say this is what everybody goes along with.
US-based Husk Power has raised $103 million in funding to build at least 1,400 mini solar grids in rural Africa and in Asia, as the firm seeks to expand to communities not connected to the national grids. Husk raised the money in its latest funding round from existing equity holders Shell Ventures and Swedfund, with the new investors, including French Infrastructure Investments Vehicles TOA and U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. The firm operates 200 mini-grids in Nigeria and in India.
Nigeria, with a population of more than 200 million people, grapples with chronic power shortages due to a generation constraint, leaving many households and businesses reliant on petrol and diesel generators. Mini-grids can solve the problem. Made up of small-scale electricity generating units, typically ranging in size from a few kilowatts to up to 10 megawatts, mini-grids generate enough power to hundreds of households.
Have a decent sized footprint in DRC as well by utilizing this new funding. But our focus is going to be India and Nigeria, where we are going to increase our footprint from 200 to 1,500 mini-grids.
In a Husk explained that $60 million of the new funds are debt from the European Investment Bank, International Finance Corporation, and other lenders, while the balance is equity from existing and new equity holders.
500.
Husk announcement comes after World Bank President A.J. Banger's declaration in August that the lenders aiming to help fund construction of 1,000 mini solar power grids in Nigeria.
And outside the shores of the country, the commercial courts of England and Wales have ruled in favor of Nigeria and the enforcement of an $11 billion Process and Industrial Developments Limited P&ID arbitration award. Justice Robin Knowles handed down the judgment physically in an open court and electronically by email to the parties today. By this judgment handed down by the justice, Nigeria succeeded in stopping the enforcement of the award, which was initially in favor of PNID. Our London correspondent Juliana Olayinka has the details.
The campaign of bribery and deception that's lasted more than 10 years has finally come to a head today, following the ruling by Judge Robin Knowles of the Business and Property Court of England and Wales. The UK judge dismissed the $11.5 billion arbitrary judgment against Nigeria by a little-known company called Process and Industry Development, P&ID. Is based in the British Virgin Islands, and they claim that Nigeria violated terms of its agreement by failing to provide gas for a power plant it wanted to build for the country. Now, as I said, this case is more than 10 years old and has spanned more than 3 government administrations. It started with the late President Umaru Yar'Adua, who, according to P&ID, contracted them to build this processing plant. The contract appeared to have disappeared under the administration of President Goodluck Jonathan, but he did agree to pay a certain amount out of court. This out-of-court settlement was then passed on to President Muhammadu Buhari, who said he was unable to make the payment. After years of being embroiled in a fight with P&ID, the case was brought in 2017 here to the Business and Property Courts of England and Wales. It was there that the judge awarded the firm $6.6 billion, representing a third of Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves. Due to the huge amount over several years, there were concerns that Nigeria's overseas assets, including properties owned in Europe, could have been seized by what we now know is a sham firm.
Well, I think the judgment itself is a welcome one. It tells that after a long time, you can still get justice if you fight for it, if you follow it, if you commit to it. But on the other hand, it says there's a need for, well, everyone to take up arms and sit down and really do what they need to do when you have contracts and agreements to attend to. There's a need for greater diligence amongst parties. If you don't understand the terms of an agreement, don't sign them. If things look unclear to you, be careful. Ultimately, just says to everyone, you've got to be careful going forward every time. The fact that Nigeria's integrity too was also involved, it called to question the internal procedures or processes that we have and that we operate in Nigeria. So it was not just about the money. It was much more than that. Our integrity, our international reputation was at stake. So it was a lot more than money.
Considering the huge amounts of money involved, it goes without saying that today's ruling is indeed historic for Nigeria. But most importantly, it does cast a shadow over sham international firms that are coming into the country, posing as foreign direct investors. Juliana Olayinka reporting for Channels Television News in central London.
And still ahead on Network Africa, Kenyan breakdancers set hopes on Olympic stage. We'll bring you the details of this and more. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Non-communicable diseases are on the rise globally. Among them are cardiovascular diseases, which is the leading cause of death. Take as many as 17.9 million lives every year. Statistics in Nigeria are murky, no thanks to insufficient data, but experts are saying the figures are on the rise. Duchess Hospital right here in Lagos, Nigeria, in partnership with Save the Heart Foundation from the United Kingdom, is taking down those numbers with subsided open heart surgeries as it marks its second anniversary.
In this conference, members of Duchess Hospital and Save the Heart Foundation are announcing greatly subsidized open heart surgeries, even though many have already been performed. The candidates were selected after a bit of sleuthing.
Dr. or Professor Bode Palashe and I, many months ago, hatched a plot to create what we called a public service waiting list initiative. And that really is what is at the heart of all of this. The principle of that was that we decided that it would be reasonable for us to consider a plan that would bring individuals in the public sector who have been waiting for life-saving heart surgery, some for months, years in some cases, into the private sector, because so they can benefit from the wonderful facilities that we have here.
The idea is to make sure needed heart surgeries can be performed after the Save the Heart Foundation team goes back to base in the UK.
We've identified individuals who have capacity and capability, and one of them is their very own Professor Palashe. He was among those that we brought first to Ireland to train, and he yielded fruit because he came back. And it's one of the 3 units in the public hospital that's able to do continuous, sustainable cardiac surgery in Nigeria.
Open heart surgery is a procedure used to treat heart diseases caused by congenital factors, inappropriate diets, and high blood pressure, among other things. Some beneficiaries of open heart surgery testify of an improved quality of life.
I want to say thank you for a second chance, because I know this is a new phase for me. I'm active and my engine has just been repumped, revamped.
They also confirmed they receive top-notch service at 1/3 of what it would cost in a private hospital setting and less than some public hospitals. The chairman of Reddington Group of Hospitals, Dr. Adeyemi Onobowale, is delighted that capacity has been transferred to local talent.
The fact that the heavy lifting in these surgeries were done by Nigerians that are local. And we have to thank you for this transfer of knowledge and skill. This is what we need in Nigeria today. If we take one thing home, please spread the word. There is cardiac surgery in Nigeria, and it is affordable.
The initial intent was to perform 10 procedures, but so far, more than twice that number have gone successfully under the knife, and the surgeries continue. Duchess plans to continue harnessing the power of collaborations with public hospitals and non-profit organizations like Save the Heart Foundation to bring world-class care to people at an affordable price. Mary Alale Yusuf, Channels Television News.
Well, more than 500 workers at the mine in South Africa have been underground since Sunday in what appears to be a dispute between the 2 unions. The National Union of Mine Workers complained the staff at One Gold Modern East Mine near Johannesburg in South Africa are being held underground against their will. They're asking South Africa law enforcement agencies to intervene. However, a rival organization, the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union, claims most of the employees are holding a protest to force the mine to recognize the AMCU. Representatives from the mine itself have sought a court order to end what they have described as an illegal sitting underground. Just last week, the Nigerian community in South Africa convened and stand in Johannesburg to deliberate on matters that affect them in the diaspora. The gathering was organized by Nigerian Lives Matter in collaboration with Nigerian Spies. It brought together eminent speakers, academics, and influential community figures. They collectively addressed the pressing issues that have been pending and their realization of a cohesive Nigerian society. Our South Africa correspondent Innocent Samusa has more.
It was another opportunity for the Nigerian community in South Africa to ventilate on issues impacting them. Speakers highlighted Nigeria's rich and diverse cultural history, emphasizing the challenges that arose from its colonial past.
The name Nigeria, where does the name Nigeria comes from? Who conceptualized the name Nigeria? How do we come together as a country? We need to realize it is always important for us to have historic perspective when there's a problem in a particular country, to be able to determine where the problem comes from.
This is the first one. It's coming in series, and we continue doing it because Nigerian Life Matter, Nigerian Spies is just a movement. We are not an organization, but an NGO that moves.
But what are some of the long-standing issues?
What is actually affecting Nigeria within the community is tribal. We don't love ourselves. We have experience of this thing you just talk about in Eswatini as well, you know. We left our various countries to meeting ourselves in different parts of the world. We don't actually know ourselves, but coming here, we interact to each other. But when it comes, everybody wants to become president. Everybody is fighting for power.
The conference didn't just focus on the challenges, but also proposed possible solutions to achieve the one Nigeria.
We need to hold people accountable for their offenses. I believe that if you see a Nigerian doing wrong, you take it to the consulate. The consulate should deport him. You should not wait for the South African government or the South African police to arrest him. We should be able to report ourselves to the consulate and get the consulate to deport the person. We can't continue to sit down here and watch people commit crime and cover up for them.
We should see beyond ourselves. We should start looking for the qualities in what qualities would you like to see in a leader? Do I see it in that man, irrespective of his ethnic group? And if I see it in that man, I support him. That's where it should be. And it means I respect you.
Well, for now, the dialogue continues, and the dream of united Nigeria and the diaspora remains a work in progress. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
And that's Network Africa for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawade.